What is going on, guys? So today I ended up checking out this movie that's available on Prime Video as well as Vudu called Clinic. This movie is based on, the story of this movie is a single mother decides to get a Brazilian butt lift against professional opinion. This movie is directed by Aleshia Jackson. As well as Aaron Tyson. Writers on this film is Aleshia Jackson, Mel Jackson, and Abdul Majid. The stars in this film is Candace Marie Singleton playing Lisa, Alex Will Brooks playing her husband, Shavonia Jones playing the antagonist of Miss Allen or Dr. Allen. I thought this film was pretty interesting. I thought that it was well balanced with some of the elements that you normally would see become misbalanced in a lot of black cinema. This one to me had a good balance of everything. The pacing and the storytelling was a little slower at points at certain moments, but then would get very direct and to the point in other moments. And so it was a pretty decent job with pacing. It's just towards the end of the film, towards that sort of climactic space, that's when it started to kind of go awry a little bit. I was noticing like the choice of music for certain scenes matched up really well. It didn't seem really obnoxious and kind of take you out of the space you're supposed to be in for the film. This film is like a suspense thriller, and it did a good job at keeping that suspense and sort of making you wonder, what was going to happen next. Even though you had a really good idea of what, you just didn't know why, and you didn't really know who until like later on in the latter part of the film. The film did a really good job at remaining understandable and relatable to its viewers. Starts off with Lisa and her husband. Lisa is a stripper, and she's looking to try to maintain bills and maintain expenses at home and things like that, while also helping her husband, who's a med student, in school, and he's trying to get done with school so that he can also be able to contribute as well. She's noticing at work that a lot of the girls are getting more money than she is and making a lot more money based on their shape and the way that they appear, based on their beauty and their appearance. One of the young ladies in the locker room towards the end of the night was telling her, you got to invest in your body pretty much, and was telling her and suggesting to her, you need to get some work done and get a BBL possibly. Lisa goes back home and mentions it and runs it past her husband, and naturally he's supportive and telling her, you don't need those things. You're beautiful without those things. And Lisa begins to tell him about childhood trauma that she's dealing with and being made fun of because of her shape and because of how her body is. She begins to research BBLs and where to go, the cost point and things like that. And she sets an appointment with an actual doctor that's a bit more reputable. And she goes to him and he gives her his professional opinion and says, you have ASP, I believe it's APS or ASP. It's like a condition where her blood either coagulates a little too much or not enough, which could pose a problem in any type of surgical situation. And as she was getting ready to leave out of the appointment, there's a young lady at the front desk that stops her and says, hey, I know a place where you can still get the procedure done. It's not as unsafe as he's making it out to be. Here's the number, you can contact, and we can set something up. The husband naturally is just like, hey, I don't know about this secondary location. This doesn't seem right to me. Don't you find this to be fishy? Lisa goes through with it anyway, and she gets there. The place is sketchy. As soon as she arrives, they're asking for a waiver signature, for a waiver. They ask you for cash up front, and they also ask you for your phone. And you also have to take off your clothes and put it in a locker. You don't get any of this stuff back until after the surgery is complete, supposedly. Lisa goes, she changes, and while she's changing, she notices that there's a mask, like a medical mask that has blood on it in the changing room. The whole place looks janky and looks a little shady, but none of that was deterring her. But she saw the bloody mask and some of the rags that was there, and so she called for the front desk clerk to come over and see what was going on. So she came in, she kind of cleaned everything up a little bit. She proceeds to change, The lady brings her into the back, and things just go haywire from there. There's a doctor that's in the back who's supposedly working and doing the surgery and doing the operations, Dr. Allen. And previously, she had lost her daughter, if I'm not mistaken, to those same exact type of surgeries. She had a court case where there was a sentencing that wasn't in her favor for roughly around 15 years, and she was to give up her practice, and she was supposed to turn herself in within 48 hours. Within that time frame, she had started her own little side practice, little side clinic situation, and was bringing these young girls in who wanted to get BBLs done, who were being turned away, and was being referred them to her, and she was, taking these young ladies out. For the rest of the film is Lisa and some of the other young ladies doing their best to fight and get out of this place, and to get away from this particular doctor who had pretty much gone off the edge. I think the basis for this story and for this movie was pretty good. I thought it was clever. I thought it was relevant. I thought it was something that everybody could sort of relate to, so far as they may have known somebody who's dealing with it. It may be a young lady who's thinking about it. It's a great underlying message of realizing who you are and realizing the beauty that lies within, and not caving into societal norms or societal pressures. There's a point in the film that I thought was really cool where they spoke about like an ancient deity, and I believe the name was Narcissus. And they were saying that this particular deity was so wrapped up in itself that somebody was able to lure it to a river, and it saw a reflection of itself in a river and drowned because it was so captivated by its own image. And I thought it was a really deep message with that. I thought it was a really important message, and I thought that it would be pretty cool if they had sort of like sprinkled nuggets about that story throughout the film, and then finally gave that last little nugget towards the end where the ladies are kind of like in too deep, or they're too far gone, and they're at that no return state where it mentions this person drowned, being so captivated by their own image, by their own vanity. And I thought that was an amazing connection that they drew with that. I felt like it came way later in the film, and I thought it would be really cool if someone was narrating and dropping that little nugget, throughout the film. The film, this had just like an odd pacing. It was sort of straight to the point, because the film just starts off immediately like in the strip club. Man, I'm not making enough money. I need to figure something out. And she was like, get a BBL. So it was kind of straight to the point there. Then there was some points where it would kind of lull a little bit, and it wasn't too bad because we kind of needed that. I didn't want the film to go too fast. The film was roughly around maybe an hour and 30 minutes, so it wasn't really that long of a runtime. And so it did seem like the film moved along fairly quickly, kept my attention the entire time. It just had a weird pacing about it, but I'm not too upset about that. My main gripe and issue that I was noticing was just when it hit that midway point of where they were at the clinic, that's when you start noticing a lot of inconsistencies. These young ladies walked into this clinic, and the first thing they asked for was a waiver. There was no consultation or augmentation sort of process or anything like that. No, let's get a good layout of what your expectations are. What are your goals? What are you looking to do? What size are you looking to upgrade to? It was really none of that. It was just, give us your money, give us the phone, here, sign a waiver. And it seemed a bit like, okay, what? And I don't know anything about how those procedures go, but I could imagine even with you trying to be sketchy about it, you have to at least be able to get a good make of the land and see where you want to put stuff at, how you want to set it. There's a recovery time, there's a healing process, and that just seemed odd. It also seemed odd that there were several young ladies in the waiting room but there was no one going back and coming out afterwards. Everybody who went back, they was just back there. And so I thought that was kind of odd, that nobody noticed anyone coming back. It was very dark. I thought that was odd. Even if it's a side place that, you know, may not be necessarily official by the books, it needs to at least be moderately lit. You can't be doing any kind of surgery on anybody and the place isn't well lit. It needs to be well lit. That was a part that I thought was really strange. It's a young lady named Karina Worm, played a Caucasian lady who was inside the clinic. And she came in and she was sort of twirling her hair, and she kind of had the spoiled brat thing going on, and she was just like, this better not take too long, I got things to do. And I was just like, who's coming in rushing BBLs? You know, that would be something that you would try to set an entire week for, so that you can properly heal and all those things. And so it just seemed a little tad bit unrealistic in regards to that. This young lady got up, that she's never been to this clinic before, completely unfamiliar with it. Got up because she was impatient about waiting, went in the back, put on a gown herself, and went like kind of roaming down this dark hallway. And I'm just thinking in my head, like, what are you gonna do? You like, hey, can you work on me now? It seemed really just unrealistic how everybody was sort of acting. Where did you find this gown at? Was it clean? You didn't notice any blood anywhere where you found it? That didn't seem right to me. There were two young ladies that were still sitting in a waiting room, and they heard a scream, and instead of just leaving out the front door where they came in at, they both collectively went deeper into the facility. It's dark. The moment I see that it's dark hallways and dark rooms and you can't really see, and doors are locked, every single door was locked weird. Is this okay? Once we notice that, it's time to go. Notify the police, like, hey, there's something sketchy going on in this place, in this facility, and move on. But no, they went deeper and deeper into this place, barricaded themselves back into this room, found this young lady who was being operated on earlier, and she just left her there. They talked to her for a quick second, and then was just like, well, we can't save you, so I'm sorry, and then left her there. And immediately after they left out, they both got killed. The killer, Dr. Allen, showed up and grabbed one of the girls and was choking her out. The other young lady was watching her do it, and just ran off and went into this bathroom. So the doctor locked her in this bathroom and then just smoked her to death. In the bed, I'm just like, what? Then, before all of this was happening, Lisa was one of the earlier people who went back to get her procedure done, and she noticed something was off, and she ended up kind of getting into a scuffle with the doctor and running off in one of the back rooms. Instead of the doctor like seeking her out and finding her and getting rid of her so she can't tell what's going on or come back and haunt her later about it, she let her go and went back to tending to her patients. And I was just like, that made no sense to me. Like I said, man, that latter part, when they're at that clinic, that midway marker towards the end of the film, it got a little haywire. It got a little crazy. It was exciting because it's still thrilling to see what's going on, what's going to happen next, who's going to get killed next, how's she going to pull this off. So it still keeps you glued that way. But if you start paying attention to what's going on, you're just like, wait a second, what? It was parts where the doctor kept going back and forth. She found Lisa, choked her out, then took her, instead of just killing her, she chained her up in like this garage that was attached to the building, and then grabbed another young lady, chained her up in the same garage, then went back and was performing another surgery on somebody, just cutting on them, and then stabbed them, and then came back into the garage, and then found the husband and was able to stab him in the legs, and then came back in the garage. It was a lot of back and forth. It was a lot of moments where somebody's doing something and the doctor come up from behind, or this person's doing something and the doctor comes up from the behind. And it got a little tired when you start noticing that was happening quite a bit. Then there was a detective, Detective Owens. He ended up arriving on the scene, and he was able to get a drop on the doctor and shot her. She drops down, seemingly like she's dead. He comes over, and then just magically, like a box cutter, was on the ground out of nowhere next to him. She gets up from behind him perfectly fine, not injured, not, wincing, not kind of moving slow, not nothing, just perfectly fine, stabs him, gets rid of him. And I was just like, why? I was still glued because I wanted to see how this panned out, but it was a rough ride. It was a rough ride. I've had worse rides in regards to films like these, but it was a little bit of a rough ride towards that midway and that latter part of the film. The husband was one of my favorite parts, favorite people to see on screen, because it seemed like everything else was so chaotic and he remained to be calm, empathetic, sympathetic, understanding, reasoning and rational and like a rational sort of a way of thinking. And so it was really refreshing seeing him on screen. There were other aspects to the story and to the film that to me didn't get fleshed out as well, but I'm not too upset about it because, this film would have just stretched out even more with Vanessa and like her parents and her sister, and that story didn't flesh out all the way. And I believe his name is Michael Owens, Detective Owens. His story and with him and his mom, there wasn't a whole lot that went on with that story, but I appreciated the aspects of kind of connecting all these stories and bringing it all together for it to make sense in the long run. Like I said, the underlying message for this film made perfect sense. I love the attention to how society is and how society will sort of pressure you into changing who you are, changing your image for them, and they still won't be happy, and so to stay true to yourself. Don't worry about what society wants. Don't get so wrapped up into vanity where you begin to lose yourself, where you begin to make terrible decisions. I thought it was a beautiful message, and it was irritating to see how trusting Lisa was for it. She was just like, it was so many obvious signs that was trying to warn her from getting this done, and she just ignored all of them, and it almost cost her life. So overall, great message. Odd pacing, not the worst film. Good music selection. They didn't overuse drone footage. I noticed that with a lot of these independent films where it's like they see what they see some other movies do on TV, and some other movies can capture drone shots and things like that, and sometimes they'll overdo it. But overall, they did a pretty good job with that. The lighting was really good. The acting for the most part was pretty solid. The only person that I thought was kind of jarring was Karina Worm, how she kind of came in was just super bratty, and so that was passable, but her getting dressed and just walking in the back on her own was so weird and so out of place and out of the norm. It was a little jarring, but other than that, everybody did pretty solid jobs. The original Dr. Allen, did a superb job at her role, just a very menacing kind of character. The husband did a good job at being like the voice of reason. Lisa did a great job at just being like this curious person who's really wanting to do better and excel in life and was trying to figure out ways of getting that done. It just happened to be not such a good way of going about it. Vanessa, the receptionist, had like this really sort of naturally crazed and obsessive sort of look in her eye that just, it bode well for like that particular role. It was excellent, very underrated just in appearance alone, and a very strong sort of character even in the few moments she was on screen. The detective, he was okay. I don't know why his hairstyle really threw me off. It seemed like he had a negative disposition with everybody he came in contact with. There was nobody that trusted him or really wanted to vibe with him at all as a detective, but he did a pretty good job, you know, with his. There were a lot of moments where his cadence seemed like it was something that he saw maybe on a Law and Order or an SVU or NCIS, some kind of a cop show. Just watching, you watch enough of those shows, there's like a usual cadence and rhythm to how they talk, some of the gestures that they make, some of the facial expressions they'll use. You will see it a lot, and it looked like he was just kind of on muscle memory doing some of the things that he's seen in movies. Didn't do a bad job at it, but it was kind of noticeable, like, okay, you saw this somewhere else before and you did that in this film. Overall, not a bad film. It's not something that I would necessarily probably revisit. Again, the rewatch value for this one for me wouldn't be that high. It's not something that I would come back and revisit that often like that. If I was rating this 1 out of 10, I would give this one a solid 5.5. Like I said, it was something that kept me interested. I wasn't bored at any part of the film, because that's usually something that happens. It's just like, all right, you get bored and you just like, all right, we can hurry this up. But for the most part, I was really interested in, like, okay, what is going to happen next? Like, what's going to happen? Like, what's going on? And so it definitely kept me interested in that way. I would give this one a solid 5.5, maybe a 6 out of 10. With the way that they're going, with the way that this film happened, and I can see them improving and making some good adjustments and coming out with some really solid films. And that is it for this video, you guys. Like, comment, share, subscribe. I will catch you guys soon. I also dropped a link in the description where you can find this film and check it out yourself, see what streaming platforms it's on. You can check it out for yourselves. I'll catch you guys soon.